Virginia Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. Congresswoman, you represent an area that is the heart of the federal workforce in Central Virginia, including a lot of military personnel. Your district could be hurt more than others if the government shuts down. Where are we right now, and what specific help are you and other Democrats willing to give the Speaker so that there isn't a shutdown?
Well, the path forward is very straightforward. It's just a question of whether Speaker McCarthy wants to take it. The option before us is an obvious one. We pass a continuing resolution that can pass the House with bipartisan support. It goes to the Senate votes, it goes to the president's desk. But Speaker McCarthy, in an effort to protect his speakership, is unwilling to bring forth a bill that will garner that bipartisan support, that will fund the government. And instead, this week, as we are hurtling towards a government shutdown that would hurt the tens of thousands of federal workers, service members, and federal contractors I represent, he is bringing forth individual appropriations bills that have no path in the Senate, that there's zero expectation that they would get any substantial bipartisan support in the House. And we are burning our daylight hours as we head towards the end of the month without a continuing resolution put on the floor that can pass the House, the Senate, and get to the president's desk in time.
So outside of the Speaker, are you having discussions with some of your moderate colleagues? I know you're a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus about a potential short-term spending bill that both Republicans and Democrats could agree upon?
Absolutely. The Problem Solvers Caucus put forth a bipartisan framework of a continuing resolution that could garner bipartisan support, that would fund the government, that would create a period of time for us to then go and do the individual appropriations bills, funding the government, addressing issues related to Ukraine aid, emergency disaster relief, and border security was present in our framework in an effort to extend the period of time that the government is functioning as we work to get those fiscal year 2024 appropriations bills through the House, the Senate, and to the president's desk.
Okay, so the president, the Speaker, I should say, is now trying to bring President Biden into this. Of course, you were part of the debt ceiling negotiations. There was a deal hatched where we thought the top line numbers had been agreed to by everybody involved in this. Obviously, House Republicans.
And Ryan, we thought that because Speaker McCarthy
the Speaker
went
told you
to the White House, said that, and then we voted on legislation confirming as much.
So to that end, my question is, he wants to meet with President Biden again. The White House even perhaps open to that idea. Is it worth it for President Biden to entertain a meeting with the Speaker, given what happened and the fallout from the debt ceiling negotiations?
I mean, I hope that the president, and I expect that the president is just as focused on supporting the federal workers, the very function of our government, our federal contractors, and our military service members, as so many of my colleagues and I are, certainly across Virginia and the rest of the country. But I do think that there's an obvious question here. What good is Speaker McCarthy's word if he can promise something, we will vote on legislation to that end, and then he will reverse his stance? I hope that any steps that can be taken that would protect the government from a shutdown, avoid a shutdown, will be taken. But I think the obvious question is, what is going to be different about whatever next agreement Speaker McCarthy might try to make with the president if he didn't keep the last one? Yeah.
So, above all of this, right, is this potential threat from hardline Republicans that they'll call a motion to vacate if Speaker McCarthy averts a shutdown by working with Democrats like you. To that end, if the Speaker comes to you and other members of your caucuses and says, I want to do everything I can to prevent a shutdown, but you've got to help me out if a motion to vacate comes to the table, would you help Speaker McCarthy out?
I think the question is if Speaker McCarthy is willing to do the job of the Speaker of the House, which is preserve the very function of the government, which is to ensure that Congress is doing its job, then that's a discussion that I think anyone is open to having. But right now, when we see one man so obsessed with keeping his job that he is unwilling to actually do that job and bring bills forward that will fund the government, which is a basic function of Congress, then, he's doing this to protect his job, not to serve Congress. And so, any conversations he wants to have with Democrats or even reasonable Republicans about what his future looks like as Speaker need to be predicated on a real desire to actually govern, which thus far the Speaker has not demonstrated. And I hope that he changes his tune quickly, and I look forward to those conversations.
So I want to point you to some of our new polling from NBC, and it shows that Republicans have a 21-point advantage on the economy. That's the largest edge they've ever had going back to 1991. Democrats lead by just 2 points on looking out for the middle class. That's the smallest edge your party's had since 1989. You are in a very moderate district, perhaps one of the most competitive districts in the country. What are voters saying to you about the state of the economy?
Things are difficult. People are struggling. Families are struggling. Life is not easy. You know, there's certain markers of the economy that are moving in a great direction. But if you're at the grocery store and you're trying to buy eggs and you're trying to feed your family and you're trying to send your kids with school lunch money, right, it doesn't feel that way. People are still struggling. And when the folks in my district or other places across the country hear some, pundit or politician on television say things are going in a great direction, things are great, the numbers might be demonstrating that things are moving in the right direction. But for so many of the people who I represent, if they don't feel that yet, or they don't feel it now, then that is hard, right? Mm-hmm. Things are hard. Life is hard. And frankly speaking, a government shutdown, especially for my district or for the entirety of Virginia, would make things harder, because the only thing more difficult than dealing with inflation at the grocery store is dealing with inflation at the grocery store when you are a devoted public servant and now you're not getting your paycheck. Right. You're reporting to work because you are essential and your work is vital, and you're not getting your paycheck. So, right? These are the real hardships that people across my district are, they have faced in the past, and they are staring down as of this weekend.
All right, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.